Snake dies, then his head does something shocking to the world. A Texas man narrowly survived a venomous rattlesnake sinking its fangs into him after he had already decapitated it with a shovel. According to local news station KIII-TV, Jennifer Sutcliffe and her husband Jeremy were working in their yard in Corpus Christi, South Texas, on the weekend of May 27th. While weeding, she spotted the snake, a western diamondback rattlesnake, and to protect her, Jeremy quickly used a shovel to chop off its head. However, when he bent over to retrieve the pieces to dispose of them, the decapitated head struck, pumping him full of deadly venom. The head actually turned around and grabbed onto his hand. He had to rip the snake's head off, Jennifer told Global News. He got all of the snake's venom in the bite. The bite of the western diamondback rattlesnake is particularly nasty and potentially lethal. It contains components that induce coagulation, which can cause blood clots to shut down the kidneys. It also ruptures red blood cells, causing internal bleeding, damages muscles and blisters, and necrotizes the tissue around the bite location. If untreated, the mortality rate of a western diamondback rattlesnake bite is around 10 to 20%. But Jeremy Sutcliffe's case was unusually severe. Although his partner immediately started driving him to the hospital, after just 2 miles he began having seizures, losing his vision and losing consciousness, she said. He had to be airlifted to the hospital, where he was put into an induced coma on a ventilator while hospital staff mixed the antivenom. They were loading him with heavy amounts of fluids and his blood pressure bottoming out, Jennifer said. His body was going into septic shock, his organs were shutting down, and he was bleeding internally. He ended up requiring 26 doses of antivenom before he stabilized. Usually, only a maximum of 4 doses is required. But you might be wondering, how in the world do you get bitten by a decapitated snake? Surprisingly easily, as it turns out. Warm-blooded animals such as mammals generate heat inside our bodies, which requires a lot of energy and oxygen. If you cut off the oxygen supply, cell death follows pretty rapidly. Snakes and other cold-blooded animals such as fish and amphibians, on the other hand, don't thermoregulate internally, instead relying on outside sources for warmth. Because their bodies aren't generating their own heat, their energy and oxygen requirements are lower. This is how some cold-blooded or ectothermic animals are able to survive conditions without oxygen for periods of time. And it's why snakes and other reptiles continue to move after being bisected. As seen in the below video, the body will reflexively writhe for a time after being cut off the brain, but the head itself can remain alive and likely on the defensive because of the pain of being chopped. It will attempt to bite whatever it can, even if it's its own wriggling body. And bites from severed snake heads have happened many times before, because people assume that the snake is dead and can't harm them. In 2014, an Australian man was bitten by a snake 45 minutes after he had cut it in half. And in 2007, in a case shockingly similar to Sutcliffe's, a Washington man got bitten by a rattlesnake after he severed its head with a shovel, then went to pick up the pieces. When he touched the head, the snake struck. Both these men survived, but it doesn't always end so happily. In 2015, a chef in China was making a dish out of a spitting cobra. He had beheaded the animal 20 minutes earlier and ended up bitten and killed. According to the U.S. Forest Service's snake safety guidelines, one should never handle a freshly killed snake for just this reason. Jeremy Sutcliffe pulled through and was brought out of his coma on May 31st. Sadly, he also suffered acute kidney failure and currently requires dialysis, but he lives to tell the tale. This was a terrible memento. A snake that was initially thought to be dead miraculously came back to life after being caught by a snake catcher in Australia, in a moment captured in the video above. Stuart McKenzie of Queensland-based Sunshine Coast Snake Catchers was tasked with catching the small red-bellied black snake on the move inside a business building, but said he found it showing zero signs of life and not breathing. When the snake catcher arrived, a large container had been placed over the snake, which was lying upside down with the edge on the snake's completely squashed head. Believing that the snake was dead, Mackenzie took the venomous snake home and was walking around with it in his hands before placing it on the table to show his wife. He was planning on placing the snake in a bag and throwing it in the trash when he noticed the slightest movement. In a Facebook post, the snake catcher said, "To my shock and excitement, the little red belly was coming back to life before our eyes." He added, "The little snake is not out of the woods yet, and we're going to get it to vet to check things out, but it's looking good. Reptiles are such resilient creatures." In a video posted online, the snake appears to be lying completely still on a kitchen counter before moving slightly, raising its head. By the end of the video, the snake is moving its whole body, despite still appearing to be groggy. Red-bellied black snakes are one of the most frequently encountered snakes on Australia's east coast. Although they're responsible for a number of bites every year, they'll only deliver a severe bite under severe molestation, according to the Australian Museum. In the wild, the snakes will freeze to avoid detection, and if approached too closely, they will try to retreat. If they're harassed, they may lash out and bite, and sometimes they may hang on and chew savagely. The museum says the red-bellied black snake is probably the least dangerous elapid snake of its size in Australia, and very few human deaths have resulted from its bite. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and leave a comment in the comments section, and we'll see you in the next video.